So we all as humans, right, we're familiar as 21st century humans with the idea of life having environmental consequences, right? We're right now, we drove here in our diesel four-wheel drive trucks, and in the process of doing that, we spewed CO2 into the environment. And we know that CO2 is accumulating in the atmosphere. It's building up gradually because of fossil fuel use by humans. That we're burning fossil fuel, we're putting CO2 into the environment. That's a modern human example of an environmental consequence. But that's actually trivial compared to the environmental consequence that these guys had on the ancient Earth. So when these guys came about, what they began doing, we think, and this is argued about somewhat, but the consensus of the scientific community is that when we find these in the ancient rock record, they were doing the same kind of metabolism that the modern ones are doing today. And what is that metabolism? I mentioned before, it's photosynthesis. And what is photosynthesis? Let's remind ourselves, plants photosynthesize, trees photosynthesize. These guys, the microbes living in here, also photosynthesize. And what does that mean? It means they take sunlight, right? This is a nice beach. They're living on the beach for a good reason. They like the sunlight. They take sunlight, they take the energy from sunlight and use that energy to take out CO2 from the atmosphere and to take water from the environment. They like living on a beach because there's water here. Take CO2 and water, combine it, and by combining it, the reason they're combining it is to make what we call organic carbon, compounds like sugars, which organisms can use to make up their structures, and that they can also consume as fuel. It's just like you and I eat a sandwich, these guys will eat some of the sugars that they produce and use that for fuel. So they take sunlight, combine CO2 and water together to make sugars and other organic compounds. That's why they're doing photosynthesis. But as a byproduct of photosynthesis, as a waste product, they spew oxygen into the environment. And to these cyanobacteria, that's mostly waste, that oxygen. And then oxygen eventually gets into the surroundings. We got in the past, Earth history, got into the surroundings, got into the atmosphere, and accumulated in the atmosphere. And in fact, that oxygen is toxic to a lot of organisms. And so really, in a very real sense, it was the first global environmental crisis produced by these organisms. By putting oxygen into the environment, they made the environment more challenging to themselves and to many of their cousins, their microbial cousins living at the time. Good for us, we learned how to take advantage of that, or our ancient ancestors learned how to take advantage of that by using oxygen for energy. But to these guys, oxygen was largely a pollutant, just like to us, the CO2 we're putting in the atmosphere is largely a pollutant and a problem.